easy it is to be at a meeting with a politician and know more than them. And that is that, if as a campaigner, as an activist, it's very easy to know more than lots of politicians. They work, obviously, I'm sure, enormously hard and can't be experts on every minutiae of policy. But as I was saying, a couple of weeks ago, our new education secretary in the House of Commons didn't know what a community school, what the difference between a community school and a church and a faith school. Often there's a law of unintended consequences with policy changes. So on the guidance for academies, I went through it last year and came up with 20 questions to ask civil servants in a meeting with them. And all of them, they were like, hadn't thought of that. A lot of, through academisation, faith groups have taken over a lot of it in the education system. Some of that was intentional, that was why the government did academisation, but some of it the government didn't really plan. I mean, this scramble to open new Catholic schools, I think the government, the Conservative government, genuinely believed they were going to get loads of groups who wanted to run academies. No one really wants to run it. I mean, it's like, it's people aren't queuing up to run public service. People aren't queuing up to run roads because that's not, people aren't passionate about it. People will elect local government to run roads. People elect their local authority and their MPs. The government, in large part, academisation, to make it easier for groups to open schools, is because they thought they'd have, ARC academies and all these, great academy trusts rushing in to open the schools, and they didn't actually want to run the schools because it's difficult, it doesn't necessarily make money, these groups aren't lining up to do it, they're not often suited for local areas. That's why they're now, they want to hit their target of opening new free schools. The only way to hit that target is to have Catholic schools opening another 50 or 60, and Church of England schools opening 250. That's the only, or 125, can't remember, because I don't think of proportions of the school. If they want to open the number of schools they want to open, local authorities would want to open those schools, but they're not going to be academies if they're local authorities. The only way the government can reach a target is by getting the faith groups to run these schools. And that's, but yeah, it is surprisingly easy if you focus on a particular area, a local area, an area of law policy, to get a meeting with an MP or local councillor and to know more than them. Never go into a meeting, try to avoid going into a meeting to find out information. If you can tell them something they don't know, that they don't have a prepared answer for, that will get them thinking, that will get them answers. MP, again, that's why we don't have just template letters. If you send an MP a template letter, they've got 1,000 of them, they can write one response. So you have an individual letter, obviously not them necessarily directly, but their staff are going to need to actually think about their response. Thank you for that.
Is there a good website to find out what the local situation is in terms of?
It's very School Dash is a good website because it's a really data-driven website. I think it was set up by some enthusiasts. It was set up by enthusiasts, which means it's got good data there, but it's difficult to find what you're doing. That's part of the problem. We don't know how many people. I'm working on quite a big research project at the moment. We don't know how many schools have been taken over by religious academy trusts. We don't know how many schools which previously had a quarter of governors appointed by the church, now the majority of governors appointed by the church, because there's no central reservoir of this information. We know, two dioceses basically said all their VCs to become academies, and all of them there have majority church governors. So that's a couple of hundred schools straight off. We don't have a database of this. We don't know how many people live in areas where their only choice is a religious school. My wife and I were looking at where we would like to have a house, and most likely we were looking at the primary level. Secondary school is a lot easier to find. But most likely the primary level we'll be looking at Church of England school. That's just the only choice in that area. But there's no good statistics on how many areas that is. There's some statistics which are kind of useful, like we have a good idea of which parts of the country there are, you know, a high demand of school places. And basically, where there's high demand, you're going to have more discrimination because, I mean, if a church in school, if a religious school is half empty, they can't discriminate against people because they need to fill the school places. There's very few areas of the country where there's accidentally too much demand, but there are areas of the country, and probably in those areas you're not going to be worrying about discrimination to any great extent, or at least so much less extent. It depends where. I mean, again, it's stuff so driven by local level. We are trying. I'm really concentrating on building up data, particularly about academies. Academies are useful because it's actually the one sense in which academies are actually quite useful. Is there's at the moment a limited number of them. There's just over, in terms of multi-academy trusts, there's just over 1,000 of them. Most of which they're called multi-academy trusts, but actually 0 members because they've not managed to open any yet. So we're trying to build up that information, that data, which is useful, but it's incredibly difficult, and the DFE don't seem to have good data for themselves. If you want to find out about schools in your area, have you heard of do you have a dedicated education person or volunteers interested in? If you're interested in learning about education and about schools in your local area, EduBase is the government's website. You can create an account for free and log in and download really good data they have. Unfortunately, it relies on the way EduBase works is every, I think, month or so they email all the schools in the country, and they do you have to update your EduBase account and log in, and then that does have. The information can sometimes be a bit patchy, but it's a comprehensive list of all the schools in the local area, the type of school, the school's religious ethos, which we didn't really get into. There's this thing called religious ethos, which is different to religious designation, and you can all force it. But basically, a religious ethos is when a school isn't a faith school, but it's run by a religious group, and so they can't discriminate in terms of they can't have discrimination in admissions. They probably have to teach local RE syllabus, but they promote the ethos of the school in other ways, like through sex education policy, the type of visitors they invite in schools, enforcing the collective worship requirement, etc. So you can find out information about your local schools. You can find contact details for local schools. You can send them freedom of information requests if there's information you want from them. Obviously, whenever you're sending any communication with anyone, politeness, not badgering schools, but and also I always don't make assumptions about schools based on the school type. You can have a church in the school, and the head teacher is a professional, doesn't care about this at all, and is just doing their job. You can have a community school, and the head teacher is faith schools. It's
so EduBase is a good starting point.
EduBase, Schools Dash, on our website, all our briefing papers. So the Faith Schools one is the most up-to-date one. So if you look through that, it's got obviously it's focused around these changes. But if you look at the footnotes, they all link to some really good things where you've got summaries of evidence. So look at the footnotes of our briefing papers. We have a facts and figures section of the website, which obviously is always out of date because the time you've done it. I mean, that briefing paper which I wrote was out of date the day it was written, and then needed to be updated several times. It is, as of today, up to date. So obviously data is an important campaign tool, but evidence-based campaigning isn't just about having facts and figures. Good, solid case studies, knowing what you're talking about, that's evidence-based. I mean, going to and talking about a faith school is, that is, we talk about the scale, and you've got, the theocratic hellhole to secularist utopia. And if you pretend all faith schools are at that end of the scale, you're going to be dismissed as not so. I mean, indoctrination and proselytization is a big part of faith schools, but they are not. It's not 100%. I mean, like, they are not just indoctrination centres. And if you begin talking about that's moving away from evidence-based. I mean, they can try, but you can't really do much indoctrination in maths class. They do encourage faith-based schools to use religious examples in maths class. One little tidbit we hear quite a lot, but even if you do that, you're not. And I would say, certainly the Christian schools, they are not attempting necessarily to indoctrinate children into a specific faith. I mean, churches and schools do not aim, by and large, to turn their children into practicing members of the Church of England. They are aiming to encourage a positive view of faith in general. They are aiming to encourage a belief in their pupils that faith is a wonderful, good thing. They're not necessarily, in fact, I would say quite rarely, focusing on trying to get them to believe specific, Church of England religious doctrine. Obviously, you'll find some exceptions and some examples, but.
Yeah, on the government's consultation.
Yeah.
I've read very briefly this afternoon. They do ask, as you said, leading questions. Do you have to follow the?
Good advice on any consultation. Don't follow the questions if you can. This is on any issue. If it's a leading question, follow them as much as you can, but don't allow it being a leading question to mean you can't answer it. Also, you don't need to answer every question. So the consultation has those questions at grammar schools. If you care about grammar schools, by all means, answer those questions, but focus on the key questions, the questions you can answer best.
Yes, but if people in a separate submission, which is not part of the questions.
Normally on consultation. So when a consultation, they can't ask you the questions. You can also send them a letter with just a letter from you, and then write on it, please consider this part of our response to this consultation. If you can write though, because you want to make it as easy as possible to find what you're saying. So if you can just send a letter to them, but if you are, make sure you've got a heading on the top, what the consultation is for, and question 1, and if it's question 46, you want to make clear this paragraph is question 46.
Yeah, so they won't dismiss it if you send it.
Oh, I dismiss it, but also on campaigning, people can get very discouraged. Particularly, we've spoken before, like you send a letter to MP, you get an absolute just bog standard stock reply. People can be discouraged by that, but you don't necessarily be discouraged by it. Things do have an influence. MPs just knowing there's a constituency that people will be pissed off if they do something they don't like, even if they do that anyway, it does factor into their thinking. But yeah, so respond to the government's consultation. Write to your MP to tell them you've responded to it. We have a petition. The petition that we have on the website about this is not necessarily, we're not focusing on getting high numbers of responses. We're focusing on getting good quotes and we're saying why is they oppose it. So we can say Tom from Nottingham, Lucy from Suffolk, like showing says this, those sort of good examples. Examples of real people caring about stuff. That's evidence-based campaigning as well.
This argument
Just a
about...
thought. Sorry.
You go ahead.
Just a thought. It's probably financially impossible, but if it were possible, would it be a good idea to have a campaign advertising national newspapers, encouraging parents to speak up about things they're not happy with?
We wouldn't want to do that for a couple of reasons, because we don't think that sort of advertising is successful. The other thing is that would lead to, let's say we spent £10,000 in advertising, that would generate a discussion in the media in which opponents of faith schools would get far more than £10,000 worth of free advertising. We do want to obviously encourage parents encourage parents to speak up, to build up evidence. We get many people, for example, we know thousands of people visit our website for information about how to withdraw from collective worship. So in a given month, a couple of thousand people might visit our website, the page, to find out how do I get my child out of collective worship, and maybe 20 parents will send an email to us about it. So we need to, those thousands who are visiting that site, maybe we need to capture their information better, more quotes on people, encouraging people in that way. We need to consider resources, and I'm not sure if we start advertising in national newspapers, I'm not sure our members would consider that would be an effective use of our resources. It's something we will obviously continue to consider in the future, and we don't see any area now where, and we do very well at punching above our weight, for an organisation. We do less well in getting the movement to punch above its weight necessarily, but we'll never look at a campaigning tool and say there's never going to be a time in the future where that's not useful, where that's not a useful tool. And if it comes a point on a specific campaign that we want to dip our toe in the water on that, that's something we very much consider. Obviously, to have the ability to do that, we need funding, we need resources. I could find work for 5 full-time researchers probably, if working on evangelism in schools. We're often challenging groups, and you find this tiny group that's just concentrating on schools in one local authority area that has 20 staff members. It's unbelievable. I don't want to sound like a broken record. Give us money, give us money, and give local groups who are campaigning against it money. It does take resources. It does take a commitment of time and effort as well. Signing petitions is easy. Telling an opinion pollster, as large majorities continually do, that they oppose faith schools is very easy to do. Joining a group, coming out on a night like today. Oh, it was lovely weather tonight, so it wasn't even raining. We would have an excuse.
I guess the argument about divisiveness is a powerful one.
Yeah. I mean, if the argument against faith schools stands on its own merits, you can just divorce and everything else, the principle stands that it is wrong for the state to fund religion, that it is wrong for the state to fund discrimination. Unfortunately, the principled argument, arguing for first principles may be great for philosophers, it's not what politicians do. The campaigns briefing looks at, that we have on Academy on the changes, looks at the additional discrimination which is caused by this. So basically, if you have discrimination in admissions, it is going to favour middle class parents. The evidence is overwhelmingly clear on this. The Catholic Educational Service, they say that their schools are actually more socially inclusive because they actually have more poor pupils than average in their schools. They love the national figures because the national figures are absolutely meaningless and make them look good. The local figures are absolutely clear that actually the schools are very, basically, the more discrimination in admissions. So if you've got a school that discriminates in 50% of admissions and a school that discriminates in 100% of admissions, the odds are overwhelming that the school with 100% admissions is going to have more middle class pupils than the parent with 50%, and again, much more than the people in the school with no religious discrimination. It does lead to ethnic segregation, as we've seen. I mean, Muslim faith schools are 98% black ethnic minority. Sikh faith schools are 90-something. Hindu are 90-something. It puts pressure on parents. Parents of minority religions, say, well, if a Sikh school opens us, there's pressure on us to send our children there. Keep going back to this, because there is an assumption that minority religious groups want to be separate and alone and don't want to integrate. And it's often driven by religious leaders. I mean, Muslim religious leaders want there to be faith schools. Ordinary Muslims, not so much. Sikh religious leaders want that, and often, individuals we know have a real personality thing of often this is opening a Sikh faith school can be a personal hobby horse for a small group and most local Sikhs in that area or even from miles away, don't really have much interest in sending their kids there. I mean, they've got more interest than parents of other religions, but that's not much. So again, also, a point I will always make is religious people tend to be more supportive of faith schools than non-religious people, but just because someone's religious, 68 rabbis writing an open letter in Times, vehemently against getting rid of this cap. I was on BBC Radio 5 Live, and a vicar calling in who was totally against getting rid of the cap. Saying just basically thinks religious discrimination is wrong against that. He thinks discrimination is against his religion. That's if they want to believe that, that's great. We had a couple of years ago, there was a Church of England school, which was basically lots of Church of England schools are on new housing developments or nearby new housing developments. They're very good at getting on that. You have a big new housing development, you need a new school. So basically, this school was already existing church in the school that applied discriminatory admissions, and a big new housing estate was being built. So they wanted to expand the school and open it up to all local kids. So that was being driven by the governors, who were obviously religious, and by the head teacher. The parents of the school did not want that. They did not want their nice middle-class school having kids from the new local housing estate coming to them. That's why people want to get good schools, and if there's any way that you can get your kid into a slightly better school, and it just happens obviously that middle class parents have people with a social support network. If you're a single, if you're a two-parent family, it's a lot easier to be managing, like making one of the parents go to church on a Sunday. If you're a single parent family, you can't say, okay, one of us will go to, we can't have one of us go to church and to get the things signed, one of us do the shopping because one of us is just me. It's and I think people do underestimate the real problem with segregation. I mean, it's the meeting at the school gates issue is so important for multiple generations. It's not just a matter of kids meeting children from other religious backgrounds. It is an issue with parents meeting with, interacting with, and different socioeconomic classes. I mean, working class and upper middle class parents meeting at the school gates. That affects how we view the whole broad swathe of society. Obviously, church schools and religious schools in general proportionally have proportionally less pupils with special educational needs. They have proportionally less pupils who speak English as a second language, and obviously many people who speak English as a second language go on to do great in schools. But it does take more resources for the teachers to manage them and to provide them the extra support they need. And if those kids are disproportionately in community schools, obviously it's going to harm community school's ability to integrate.